So I want to get your reaction to a couple things that I came across over the last week that are under this umbrella of topics. Up first, this is a TikTok I went into expecting not to like, but actually kind of liked parts of it. Take a listen to this.
So when I say my pronouns are they, them, I'm just letting you know, yo, I would like for you to acknowledge the fact that I'm not a man or a woman, that I exist outside of this binary. But if you don't do that, that's your problem. It's not mine. You cannot misgender me because my gender is something that is personal and beautiful. Oh my God. The way that the energies flow through me that created whatever the fuck we got going on over here is unique. It's unprecedented. So I'm not mad at you for being confused. I'm not mad at you for getting it wrong, to be honest. But that's not my work to help you fix that. Good luck, baby. Good luck.
So look, I don't really think the whole they, them pronouns thing and the non-binary thing is legitimate. I don't really think it makes sense, but I will say this. I appreciate that this TikToker, unlike a lot of the ones, seems pretty confident in their sense of self, that they don't need people. He doesn't need people to affirm him. He's like, if you don't want to do it, that's your problem. I'm fine. I believe myself to be this way. I actually really like that, because a lot of them have this like projected narcissism where they're like, you will respect me, you will use my pronouns. And I actually think you shouldn't, if you're an adult, go around in the world constantly needing everybody's affirmation. Like, if you're so truly strong and confident in your identity, it should be independently resilient.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was also pleasantly surprised. And I like when he said something about, I do expect you to use they, them if we're going to be friends, or, if we're going to get to know each other. And that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I don't think that non-binary is a real thing. It is not a real thing. That's a fact. So if someone is claiming to be non-binary, I'm perfectly fine with not having a deeper relationship with them. You know what I mean? So sometimes I joke with my friends and I say, well, sometimes it's nice to see people having their pronouns in their bios, because then you know what type of people to avoid. So it's kind of the same thing with him.
There is a certain personality type that corresponds with pronouns in bio that has nothing to do with the actual pronouns, because a lot of times it's just the typical pronouns, she, her, or he, him. But it's like a certain militant type of social justice personality is the kind that puts their pronouns in their bio. Not always, but often. So it is a little bit of a red flag sometimes.
Yeah, and it's nice to know them beforehand.
It's also interesting to me when people do like she/they, because it's like, how can you simultaneously be non-binary, which means you feel as if you're not either sex or gender, yet also be comfortable being referred to as one of the two genders? The whole thing is rather incoherent to me.
Well, I consider that being lazy, because you don't want to be a they, them, but you don't want to be a she, her. So yeah, it's laziness.
I do think it's interesting, though, this guy in this video, and no hate to him personally, but if you're going to call yourself non-binary, yet still maintain such an obviously masculine appearance, for audio listeners, this guy looks completely like a man in every way. It doesn't seem to me, and he's not, to his credit, he's saying, if you don't want to use my pronouns, that's your thing. But it doesn't seem very fair to expect people to view you as gender neutral if you completely present yourself as gender typical.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, there's no such thing as looking gender neutral, because, we're programmed to recognize people as either male or female. And, sometimes it's hard to tell, but after a few seconds, you're like, that's a woman, that's a man. That's just how our brains work. And even though I appreciate his calm energy instead of this narcissistic energy we do see a lot within the non-binary community, I just wonder, what is the point then? If you don't care that people misgender you, what's the point? Because, I don't understand the point either way, but I just, if you don't have the biggest problem with it, is it really that important? Why can't you just Be a he, him then.
Well, let me ask you this then. How do you feel about they, them, non-binary being lumped in with trans? Because from the activists of the world, they want to lump that in as part of the transgender umbrella.
Yeah, I consider it cultural appropriation, actually. I think they, I think that they, thems are just regular people who have been looking at the trans community for many years and been like, I want to be a part of that too. But they don't really have gender dysphoria because that's a biological disorder, right? And you can't like choose to have it. So they're like, how can I be a part of that? Get all the attention, the positive affirmation without actually transitioning. And then non-binary was born. That's my theory.
Yeah, I think genuinely, like, actually being trans is not a fad. It is not. Now, there are some cases where maybe it's people who say they are trans who aren't actually, but legitimately people who have gender dysphoria is not a choice. It's not a fad. It's not a trend. I actually do think non-binary is a trend to some extent. I think it is a fad because it requires very little of you. You can just say, I'm non-binary now. You don't actually have to change anything about your personality. You don't even have to change your pronouns, which is strange. And so it really is a way, especially among Gen Z, where being part of the alphabet people has become a form of social currency of clout, right? It's like, oh, I'm a marginalized community, or I'm not a cis-het person. There are few things worse among Gen Z than being cis-het. I think the only thing worse is being a Republican.
Christian.
So I just find it funny. I do kind of think it's the same thing. And like we were saying before, I think it's fundamentally kind of incoherent. So, for example, take a look at this gender fluid TikToker who was profiled by Pink News.
Hi, my name is Sierra Kai. I'm 17 and I am gender fluid and bisexual. Gender fluid means that I can switch from being feminine to masculine to neither or both. I can go for days, weeks, months of being masculine, feminine, neither or both. I switch a lot and it is kind of confusing, but it's just a feeling that I can't really control.
So, for audio listeners, this 17-year-old who's supposedly gender fluid is just shown in this video flashing through different outfits that are like, one's more masculine and one's more feminine. And I'm like, hold on. So, by gender fluid, we're supposed to believe that this is like a identity, but it's literally just sometimes her wearing different fashion styles is all that's actually shown as what it means to be gender fluid. Like, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so concerning how these young people have the wrong perception of what it means to be a man and a woman. And I think the whole theory of there are more than two genders is just an intolerant theory, because she's implying that women can't wear masculine clothing, which I don't really think
like camouflage or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's so intolerant. Like, so she's not a woman, or a girl, she wouldn't call herself a girl just because her gender expression, which is not the same as her gender, her sex, it kind of changes, which I don't really consider it. I don't think she's changing that much. But I think it's so intolerant, and it's the young generation thinking like this, and it's weird to me.
So, I mean, it's literally like, for example, her one where she's feeling like neither that day. She's just wearing camo print clothes that are like athletic fitting or whatever. And it's like, it's actually a deeply regressive and kind of sexist view of gender, that these are boys' clothes and these are girls' clothes. I've always thought that, with the exception of the rare people with genuine gender dysphoria, I think people should just be allowed to be more masculine girls or more feminine boys, right? Because a lot of the stuff that we attach to gender really doesn't have anything to do with gender, at least it shouldn't. So if you want to wear pink and you're a boy, that's fine. It doesn't make you gender fluid. It just makes you a boy who wears pink. If you're a girl and you want to wear camo, it doesn't make you gender queer. It just makes you a little butch girl a little bit. Like, what's wrong with that? And how is this perverse idea that you have to, like, be gender queer, gender fluid in order to dress certain ways, how is that progressive?
Exactly. And why is she posting it on TikTok? Because, you know, the people who are like, oh, I'm just being myself, I'm just being me, I'm like this, I'm like that, I'm just being myself. Are you? because you keep talking about it and you keep showing it off. If you're just being yourself, don't talk about it. That's literally the opposite of just being yourself when you keep bringing it up and thinking that you're special. You know what I mean?
That's the problem. Is they get social currency from it. They get clout from it. It gets them likes and views. And that's fine, right? You and I both create content. We want to get views and likes. But there's a little bit of a problem when you're incentivizing people with attention to identify as part of these perceived victim groups. Like, clearly you are going to increase the number of people identifying as them beyond what it actually is.
And when it's children and young teenagers, I'm just getting really concerned because that, children and teenagers need the validation more than anyone, basically. So,
and they're so susceptible to social influence and peer pressure. It's like, do they really identify as these things, or is it cool? Is it a fad? Is it what they're being bombarded with on TikTok and Instagram? And in the case of just like somebody who's genderqueer and dressing different ways, it's relatively low stakes. But in the case of some of this, where they're getting surgeries or taking hormones or taking blockers, or these things aren't reversible in many cases, right? So if you realize down the line it's not actually what's right for you, but you were 17 at the time, I think, look, nobody's really well equipped to make life-altering decisions at 16 or 17. I know I sure wasn't.
And me neither, even though I am trans. I was 20 until I started my physical transition. And it's easy for me to say now that, oh, I could have done it way earlier. Sure, because I'm on the other side and I'm an adult. But I wasn't ready to do all this when I was 16. And I hate when people say, well, does it need to be an 18 plus limit? What about 17? What about 16? What about 15? Like, do you remember when you were 15, how stupid you were and like immature and all those things? Like, it's so disappointing when people don't get it,
I mean, we don't let you get a tattoo. I don't know what it's like where you are, but in the US, you can't get a tattoo at 16, right? Like, because it's permanent.
Yeah, and you can't even drink a beer, which I think is ridiculous. But yeah.